Perfectionism is killing your creativity. You may think you're setting high standards for yourself, but in reality, you're just stopping yourself from creating at all. Today, we're going to be diving into the dark side of perfectionism in art and how you can break free from it before it breaks you. So many artists struggle with perfectionism, often not realizing just how damaging it is. Have you ever completely scrapped a project because you felt like it wasn't good enough? Or have you spent hours and hours on tiny, tiny little details? Have you had an idea for something and then managed to talk your way out of it because you're not ready, or you haven't got all the elements together that you need, or you don't feel prepared enough? You are not alone. The first thing I want to talk about is perfectionism with productivity. Perfectionism feels productive, but it's not. Many creatives mistake perfectionism for ambition or attention to detail. But the reality is, perfectionism, particularly in high levels, only leads to procrastination. It leads to frustration and sometimes never finishing anything at all. Here's a great example. My YouTube channel. Okay, so this is something that I know I've been needing to start for a really long time. Having a YouTube channel is something that I've had in my plan as a business for maybe the last 5 or 6 years. And only September last year did I finally start it. Because it's not something that I felt came naturally to me as a creator, you know, the idea of content creation, ever being present online on social media, putting my face and my words out there for all to see on a regular basis, you know, naturally being an introvert, you know, I chose to be behind the camera often for a reason. I found an endless number of excuses not to start it. And it was all down to my perfectionism. You know, I thought, okay, I don't want to start my YouTube channel until I've worked on what my channel's going to be about. You know, I was always thinking about what's the really far away end goal, you know, is it high production value, you know, and also the fact that because I'm a photographer and an image maker, I felt that my videos needed to be perfect. They needed to be polished. They needed to really represent, you know, how good I am at taking pictures and lighting things and, you know, the microphone, talking, all these things, you know, and I felt like I needed to have a really long-term plan for what it was I was going to talk about. I thought, well, where am I going to do it? What's my background going to be? And I'm looking at what other people are doing and it's got to be like that and what works. And then my brain is sort of spiraling already thinking, you know, what if it doesn't work, or what if nobody watches, or how long is it going to take for traction to build? You know, how can I keep it up if it's, you know, I know already that it takes a long time to develop these things and these channels, and you've got to stick with it, and it's perseverance alongside trying to do other things like run a photography business and meet with clients and do pitches and do meetings and go to London and go abroad and also have a life as well. I have a personal life outside of this. So there's so many reasons not to start something when you want everything to be perfect. And the freeing thing that finally made me start this was my agent Scott, who, as a lot of you probably already know, has a YouTube channel, Tin House Studio. And I think a lot of you guys who are watching, you may have come from Scott's channel. He sat down with me and he said, look, the first video you're going to release, accept it will be shit. Accept that what you put out there for the first time will be crap. Him telling me that was so freeing. It just made me go, okay, I accept that I must not have expectations for that first video. I am at peace with the fact that I'll probably seem really disjointed and awkward and all these things, you know. And he was showing me examples of earlier videos of other YouTube channels and his own earlier videos, and it just forced me to let go of control, because that's ultimately what I feel I need to feel safe. I feel I need to have control over everything, and it's just not possible. It's not reality. You can't have control over every single thing. There are going to be things that are out of your control, and letting go and accepting that is the hardest thing in the world, particularly when you're a perfectionist by nature. The thing that Scott made me realize is done is better than perfect. We don't learn if we don't do. You know, I could wait 10 more years to release my first video, and no matter how prepared I think I am. I could have spent all of those 10 years preparing the perfect 10-year plan for a YouTube channel. The first video probably will suck. And that is because I've never done it. I've never released anything. I've never had feedback. I've never heard from other people what they need from me, because ultimately that's what, this channel is for. It's to provide value. This isn't for me. This isn't my sort of little self-indulgence project. This is me giving back. This is me wanting to contribute in some way. And I won't know really what that is until I hear from you guys. That's what I've learned. And from doing that first video, I now know what the second video was going to be about. And now I know I'm starting to figure out where I am now with it. So if you don't do, you can't learn and you can't grow and you can't make something better. And I realized that, when I started photography, I could have waited until I had all the money in the world to buy the best camera, the best lights. I'd read all the books, I'd done all the research. I had a studio, I had a setup, I had the best model I could find. I could have waited until I had all of those things to start. But when you're younger, I would have been, 17 I would have been when I first started taking pictures. I was young enough to have less of a worry of consequences. I was young enough to still be open to play and mistakes and care less about things. And I wasn't thinking so much about, where am I going to be when I'm 35, 40? Am I going to have this successful career? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be happy? At 17, I'm just like, cool, let's just take some pictures and see what happens. And, I've talked about this a lot in one of my other videos, I'll link below. As we grow older, we just lose that sense of play and that sense of freedom and that sense of who cares, and, let's just see and find out. Let's just wing it. We lose that because we're worried so much about, our life and consequences and what could happen, what could go wrong. So the older I've gotten, my sort of ingrained perfectionism has come through more and more and more. And it'd be really interesting to know if it's something that you feel like you struggle with as well. And that leads me nicely on to perfectionism creates fear, not growth. So fear of failure and judgment stops people from taking risks. And risks are something that we need to take in order to create. That's just the way it is. And the word risk is often associated with, a really potentially catastrophic consequence. But a risk is a risk. It doesn't matter how big or how small you deem it to be. And when we're being a perfectionist, we just don't even take them. So inside, our brains are saying, I want to avoid discomfort. And to do that is to not try and do the thing. If I don't do the thing, I'm not putting myself out there to fail, to feel discomfort, to be judged, or to feel self-doubt. Many great works of art weren't seen as perfect. They were raw and real and a true reflection of life. And that's why they resonated. Basquiat is a great example of this. He was a graffiti artist turned global icon. His paintings were chaotic. They were often unfinished. They were completely unpolished. And that's exactly what made them so powerful and so different and so unique to his voice. He painted with reckless energy. He had no concept of consequence or is this a good idea or hesitation. He was a big believer in what you erase is just as important as what you leave in. So a lot of his work had, words that were crossed out and scribbles and raw brushstrokes and visible corrections. There was a sense of urgency and raw emotion in his work. Basquiat really redefined what art could be. He had this wonderful childlike expression in what he did, and you can, whether you like his work or not, you can feel the freedom and the expression and the playfulness. You can feel the honesty in his work as well, with all the things that he maybe felt he didn't like. He left them in and crossed them out, and it almost made you want to look at them more. They stood out. Basquiat's work can be seen not so much as a flaw, but as its own language. So after all of that, I really want to talk about how you can break free from perfectionism. And of course, my biggest lesson was from Scott: embrace good enough. Those are words that I have always said I would never say. I would never, ever, ever accept good enough. While I appreciate the sentiment in that, on one side it kind of says that I really care about this project and I won't just, throw it out there if I feel like it's not ready. On the other hand, you're in danger of never putting it out there and never giving yourself the opportunity to learn from it. So I really encourage you to try and finish whatever project it is that you have already started or have been wanting to start, in whatever capacity or way that that is. And if you're struggling with that, then a really great exercise to try is to make bad art on purpose. Pick something up, try something that you haven't tried before or something that you've been putting off trying, and go in with the mindset that this might suck, and that's okay. Even if it's something that you think, oh, I can't do that, or I've never been able to do that. Like, a lot of people say to me that they can't draw. That's a big one I hear all the time. I can't draw, or I can't paint. I don't know how people do it. It's like a different language to me. Give it a go. It might suck. That's fine. Get used to and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Get used to the feeling of, oh, I can't do this, or, this feels like a waste of time. It isn't a waste of time. You're training your brain to do something new. You're creating new pathways. You're learning a new skill. The best bit is that you've put no pressure on yourself to do it. There is no pressure to show it to the world, to make money out of it. It's simply for you. It's simply a way of getting used to the idea of something that may not come to fruition, and that's okay. Doing that on a regular basis, it frees your mind so much, and it gets you used to discomfort. It gets you used to the idea of knowing when perfectionism serves, knowing when it doesn't. And it's been a wonderful little therapeutic thing for me, and something that I can add to my toolkit now, because it's something else that I can turn to if I feel like I need to relax. So the big takeaway here is the world doesn't need perfect art. It just needs your art. It needs your voice, your perspective. The stuff that's messy, that's raw, that's honest. That's what connects us. So stop overthinking, let go of the pressure, and just create. So I'd really love to know if any of you guys have really struggled with perfectionism, and how have you dealt with it? How have you found it kind of being part of your life? Please leave me a comment below. I'd really love to hear your experiences.